So رح نحكي اليوم from our side we'll talk about a bit the fintech trends. شو عم بيصير in the fintech industry, and then we'll tell you a bit about the Risk Plus solution story and how we did this, how we founded this company. And then we'll talk a bit about the challenges and the way we solved them and faced them while we're founding Risk Plus. And we will end with few ideas of available opportunities in the fintech industry in the region. Not specific ideas, but a framework that we followed when we came up with Risk Plus. So the fintech trend started almost more than 10 years ago, and it was made possible, it was enabled by all the technology advances that was leveraged by the financial industry. Plus, what pushed people to invest and to actually build fintech companies is the customer preferences changes. And I'll explain a bit. So on the technology part, first of all, there was a huge increase in the penetration of internet and smartphones. And people were using smartphones much more than they used it before. قبل كان تليفون بس for texting and messaging. Now you can think of the multiple ways you use your phone. In addition to that, صار في اليوم applications that are focused على banking and finance. رح نحكي عنهم شوي. What also helped the fintech industry is the increase of the computing power and all the cloud computing, which helped increase the computing power, and it did that at a lower cost than what used to be the case previously. يعني example اليوم banks can run millions and millions of records, or fintech companies can run millions and millions of records and do analysis on such huge data, which was not possible before all these technologies came into play. And the third point that is very important today, and it is one of the areas where the fintech trend is investing currently, and the expectation is that investments in the fintech industry will focus around this, is all what has to do with the big data analysis. لأنه اليوم من وراء the whole social media and all how internet is now attached to everything we do, we have a lot of available data اليوم to analyze the customer behavior, which is a very important part when it comes to finance and banking. يعني كيف الزبون بيصرف مصرياته, how do they use their credit card, where do they use it. All this information can help us to understand how the customer behave, and in this will give us a lot of insights on the products that we can push to the customer. On the custom preference side, a lot of products are now available through digital versus physical channels. Let's take Amazon as an example. اليوم بعد يمكن بلبنان شوي عم تتطور, بس في بلاد عالم ما بيشتروا إلا online, ما عاد يروحوا على physical stores. And people are expecting this from their banks. And that's why fintechs came and filled this need. البنوك شوي بطيئين usually. They're huge banks used to operate in a certain way. Fintechs leveraged the technology and they came and filled this gap in a faster way. البنوك ما لحقوا يعملوا reaction عليها. Just a quick overview on the fintech investments. So the fintech investments between 2014 and 2015 increased by more than 100%. Payments are still, in terms of number of financial technology companies, are still the biggest part. بعدين بيجي the investment business. However, lately, in terms كمان of capital deployed lending, all the peer-to-peer lending platforms, هلا رح نعطي example عنهم, are the type of financial technology companies that are attracting the highest amount of capital in terms of in dollar terms. What's happening lately, and this is a very important point, financial technology companies started as to disrupt the banking industry. They were competing the banks in where the banks had monopolies for multiple years. Examples مثل Lending Club, which is one of the lending financial technology. Lending Club is a peer-to-peer lending platform. يعني اليوم بدل ما اروح انا على بنك اتدين من البنك, I go to Lending Club, I upload my information, and then people will come and lend me money through this platform. And Lending Club is one of the big success stories in the fintech industry. Another type of financial technology companies that are actually competing with banks are actual full-fledged digital banks. Monzo is one example, where basically you have a digital bank ما عنده ولا فرع. Everything is done through an application, a mobile application, where you open your account and you transfer your money there, and خلاص, you use this application as your bank. But now the trend is shifting from financial technology companies that are trying to compete with banks to financial technology companies that are trying to collaborate with banks. And this trend is due to multiple reasons. One, banks وعيوا للخطر اللي عم بيشكله financial technology, and they started to invest themselves into digitizing their processes. Two, financial technology companies كمان وعيوا for the fact that banks have the credibility, they have the trust of the customers, and they have a huge customer base. And they came to a conclusion that there is a win-win situation where they can collaborate instead of basically competing with each other. And we have multiple examples. Simple is an example that is kind of in between. Simple is an online, is a digital bank, but where actual banks have invested in and they have created it. So they're kind of a subsidiary of a normal bank. We have other type of financial technology examples like Plaid and Backbase that help banks to digitize themselves. يعني اليوم البنك, a lot of banks, maybe not in Lebanon yet, but a lot of banks even in the GCC and the MENA region, they're trying to digitize their processes. يعني opening an account through an application on your iPad in few clicks. مصور الباسبور بياخذ هو, they scan all the information, they fill automatically this information, and then you can open an account in 10 minutes instead of going and sitting in a branch for many hours to not open a bank account. Risk Plus is a financial technology company that is actually collaborating with banks. And what we do for banks is, Jad رح يحكي in detail, but what we do for banks is we provide risk management solutions to digitize the way the bank manage their risk exposures and balance sheet exposures. So it's not the bank's client digitization, but it's more of a digitization for the bank's management. وهلا جاد رح يحكي عن how the company was founded and the actual value proposition.
So the way the idea came to basically establish Risk Plus Solutions is that each of us on his own. I used to work for the Central Bank of Lebanon for more than 10 years, and Chadi was a consultant for Booz and then McKinsey, and before that worked for several large banking groups. Both of us clearly identified important gaps whenever banks were involved in establishing new solutions or changing their IT infrastructure. And those gaps were really clear to us, and I will detail them a bit. The idea was that anytime a bank decided to implement a new solution to compute a new risk metric imposed by new regulations, or to enhance the way they calculate their profitability, their risk-adjusted profitability, they faced lots of problems in terms of the need for hiring consultants, and those consultants were basically helping banks in understanding the business requirements, the technical requirements, and then they reached out to IT vendors who had the mission to implement those technical solutions in IT solutions basically. So اللي كنا نشوفه كتير هو miscommunication كتير كبيرة when المسؤولين بكتير بنوك عن انه يطبقوا هالنيو regulations او يشتغلوا باني نيو ريسك متريك مطلوبه منهم او even an older risk metric منهم دايما aware of all the technical requirements that are basically prerequisites لهال solutions. So يجيبوا consultants ليساعدهم يفهموا اكثر الريجوليشنز، يتعلموا اكثر شو المطلوب، كيف بيحسبوهم etc. And this by itself created lost time solutions that were not always catered exactly customized للزبون، شوي one size fits all. بذات الوقت كانوا يروحوا عند IT vendors ليعطوهم IT solutions to reflect كل هال new calculations أو new regulations. ودايما كمان ال IT vendors بكتير من الأيام يصير في miscommunication، ما بيفهموا منيح على بعضهم، في really gap، في wall حقيقي بين ال practitioners وبين ال IT people. نحن our idea was basically to play a one-stop shop, basically the end-to-end process. Experience تبعنا helped us because we were very exposed to basically all types of regulations that govern banks' businesses, including accounting regulations, risk regulations, etc. So we know the technical requirements inside out. With a team of IT professionals قادرين انه to put those solutions in really very robust tools that are customized للبنوكة، وهيك نلغي and to avoid هالmiscommunication اللي كانت تصير. So we play the role of the consultant, we play the role of the IT vendor, and we basically do what is very rare in this industry. A lot of banks when they acquire solutions they tend to use them like black boxes. هلا حاحكي دقيقتين بعد شوي عن ال IFRS 9 مثلا when I will give an example of how as a startup we really have the flexibility اللي هي شوي cliché. When you hear startup you always think you have the advantage of really being flexible, and it's true. Most of the clichés are true in this sense. So what a solution مثل ال IFRS 9 مثلا, it was really very problematic for banks to comply with it. So they buy solutions that are used as black boxes, as I was saying. يعني بيستعملوهم, they get results without always, and it might shock you, without always understanding شو عم بيصير جوا. يعني it's a calculation tool where you feed in balance sheets, numbers, etc. and then it spits out numbers for expected losses, loss given defaults, etc. And some banks tend to use them without really understanding the whole process اللي وراه. So the last point of the value proposition تبعنا is actually to provide the appropriate training, to provide the knowledge transfer للclients تبعنا, so that when we leave the bank, the solution that they buy from us is no longer a black box. They know exactly the algorithms that run inside it, the assumptions, the mathematical calculations اللي جوا, وهيك بيكون really the product حقق الهدف تبعه in terms of سكر الريجوليشن المطلوبة منهم, خلى الشغل تبعهم يصير more efficient, and at the same time تعلموا هن وصاروا هن قادرين to continue with those new regulations. So basically the idea came to play this full role. I'll give you some quick examples basically of what we do. So we have 3 suites of products, and those products, they fall under 3 broad areas: performance management solutions, balance sheet optimization solutions, and stress testing solutions. كل وحدة من هول constitute a very large area لكل bank. For example, as a quick example, for performance management, it might appear for a lot of people that it's easy to understand the profitability of each loan, of each department, etc. In reality, it's absolutely not the case. Most banks run in the traditional structure where branches take deposits, so they are always viewed as cost centers. They basically pay interest to clients, and then you have loan granting departments that basically are viewed as money-making machines. In reality, the idea is not that simple, and those branches are not only cost centers, they are basically generating a profit, even though normally you can't see it at first sight. So our idea is to calculate risk-adjusted performances on loan levels, department levels, relationship manager level, which will help banks in more efficiently understanding which loans are more profitable, which branches are more profitable, which departments are more profitable, and then to reallocate or to reshift their portfolios in the most optimal way. If you consider as a last example the second suite, you can see here the IFRS 9 solution, which is designed to help banks comply with the newly introduced IFRS 9 standard. which actually is an accounting standard that is everything but not an accounting standard. It now required banks, whenever they grant loans, on day one, whenever they grant loan, on initial recognition, they have to calculate expected losses and book them as losses in their P&L. And this is a huge shift. It's a structural shift from anything that we knew earlier. Earlier, when banks granted loans, if the client does not default, then nothing happens. And whenever the client defaults, it's at that point in time where banks booked losses, where they recognized those losses. Now, with the newly introduced standard, at day one, when you grant a loan, and the loan is obviously performing, you just granted it 1 second ago, you have still to expect the losses that you might incur on that loan and book them as losses. As a startup, we actually use the flexibility cliche that that any startup should actually use, and this product was supposed to be the last one in the second suite of products. We actually spent 3 months on it, on top of doing all the suite 1 products, and we finalized it. And as of last week, we have already sold that product to 2 banks, with 2 more in the pipeline. And our company was only established in Feb. So the IFRS 9 is one of the most technically advanced products, and it's really by shifting some of our capacity, by reallocating some of our time to this particular product, we kind of disrupted our own schedule for the elaboration of those products, and we were able to answer this very, very urgent need, because this standard will become applicable in January 1, 2018. And it's really the struggle of all the banks in all the banking systems everywhere, worldwide, and it's not only here in Lebanon. This is the standard that was responsible for changing an accounting standard into a very, very advanced, challenging, mathematical, risk management-based exercise. So this is just an example on the flexibility that as a startup we have, and which we actually used here to respond to a very urgent market need. So basically, so what we do is, very simply, this is the way we operate from an IT perspective. We actually created products in a very modular way, in such a way that banks do not really need to acquire the full set of products that we develop. What we do is that we have created our own data model, and then we extract, using ETLs, we extract all the data from the several core systems that bank use. We transfer them into our data model, and then all our products are basically linked to this collection of tables, actually, and then all our algorithms or our formulas, they can read from this standardized, uniform collection of table. Why? Because one of the major issues in this type of business is that when you go to a bank, sometimes each department or each line of business actually relies on a given IT solution internally. So the hard job is to basically centralize them all into one data model, into one basically place where all the algorithms and all the product would read from. So this is really in 2 words. So just to also talk 2 minutes about challenges along the way. Maybe we can summarize the challenges in 3 main parts. First of all, as a new startup, really a challenge was to attract and retain actually very talented individuals. Basically, our target colleagues are actually people with a lot of experience, people who have a very solid mathematical background. They should possess, of course, a given experience in the banking sector. And those people are usually the ones who enjoy good positions in the banking system. So it was really challenging to attract them and then to convince them to embark with us on this journey. Basically, the way we kind of mitigate this is basically, for myself, Risk Plus is my second startup. 5 years ago, I established a company called Finance and Risk Institute. We are today the largest provider for CFA, FRM, and CFA classes with no less than 700 participants yearly. So an important point in startups, once again, is the flexibility, is really to work with what you have, to leverage what you have. A lot of people, unfortunately, view startups as a lottery ticket. In reality, you really need to leverage every single strength that you have. And I teach a lot CFA and FRM courses, so we had a kind of a privileged exposure on very talented people. Some of them are here today. They were also my students for the CFA and FRM exam. And we really leveraged this exposure to special talent and really people with the good experience, and we were able to attract them with us. Of course, walking the talk is important. I left the central bank, which is it's probably the most stable job in Lebanon, and my colleague also, Chadi, the co-founder, left McKinsey, which is probably the largest consulting firm. So basically, whenever we were trying to convince someone to basically embark with us, I believe that since we left stable jobs and we were really passionate about what we're doing, then we were probably able to convince them. Of course, a second challenge would be the bank's acceptance for our products. Let's not forget that we are the only local business here in Lebanon that is involved in creating those risk management solutions. So our natural competitors, of course, are international, very mature, very well-established firms, Moody's, SunGard, etc. When we go to a bank to sell an IFRS 9 solution, this bank has already received the visit of Moody's, S&P, Fitch, etc. So it's really extremely challenging for us to convince them, both from the technical robustness of the product, but also the cost of the product, etc., given that the benchmark they compare us to is really quite high. So the way we mitigated this is honestly in the easiest but also hardest possible way, which is to really create a flawless product, super well calibrated to the bank specificities. We do not sell one-size-fits-all product that are uniform, standardized. We know the regulations inside out. This was our job, basically. And we were able to offer them a bespoke product, really technically flawless, very robust, and at prices that, of course, are very far from what international players would charge. And this is what actually enabled us to penetrate the market very quickly. Banks are reputed for being the most difficult customers because they have, some banks have 4,000 employees. A lot of them are super well trained. They come with a huge experience, a lot of exposure to local and foreign markets. They are very hard to convince. It's not like you're selling them a product where you're selling them a product that is actually doing their job or helping them do their job. You can expect them to be extremely picky. They know exactly what they want. So basically, this is very challenging, but it's also, it's one of the best areas of what we do, actually. Finally, of course, the instability that is no secret to anyone here in Lebanon and the region. This plays a negative role on banks' propensity to acquire, actually, products. So the way we mitigated this is by offering products that fall into two categories. You have basically the good-to-have products, which are kind of seen as luxury items, and those are very cyclical in nature. Whenever you have instability here, banks will tell you, you know what, your product which helps us calculate risk-adjusted return on capital is good, but since we can live without it, we'll just postpone it for now. So basically, to mitigate, to hedge that very particular risk here in the region, we have also expanded the RegTech products under our umbrella. For example, IFRS 9 is a product that addresses a global regulatory requirements. So banks do not really have the luxury of saying, you know what, we'll postpone it. They have to abide by those standards, just like the Basel requirements or the IFRS 9 requirement. So basically, by developing products that respond to a must-have technology, we were able to a little bit to smooth out the effects of the growing instability and the lower propensity of banks to spend on such items in times of crisis. Of course, trying to diversify regionally is also a good diversifier for us. So I think basically I'm done. I just want to add just one word. One of basically the most challenging aspects of this business, since you have to attract really very talented people, you're getting them from companies like Mises, like very large firms. All of this, of course, would not have been possible without the support of the Phoenician Fund, with Jad here, the fund manager, and the Central Bank Circular 331, because it's really very important. People tend to talk about the 331 as yeah, we have to mention this somewhere. I hope that really everybody realizes that this circular actually filled a blank, filled a space, a gap, which should have been filled by other parties. But this is really a point which was indispensable, I believe, for us and for a lot of companies. And without it, this would not have been possible. So this is important to mention also.
That's how we came up with Risk Plus, and I think this is a framework that can be followed in order to come up with other fintech companies in the region. We tend to, whenever we want to come up with an idea, we tend to focus on coming up with a whole fresh idea, but that's not always the way to go. And a lot of big success stories, and not in the financial technology area, but in other tech startups like WhatsApp or Facebook or even Apple products, they were not invented by like the product was not invented by WhatsApp. It was already existing. WhatsApp did it in a better way. And that's how Risk Plus came up. So Risk Plus as a core idea is not a whole new idea. It's just an idea that existed, but we just tailored it to the market in the region, and we were trying to do it in a better way. So it's somewhere between tailored idea and boosted idea. And today I think there is an opportunity in the market where we can see ideas that have been tested in foreign countries like the US or Europe, and where we can bring here, do it in a tailored, better way by also benefiting from the enablers. One of them, Jad just mentioned it, is today there is funding in the market with the Circular 331. It's helping a lot of companies to actually get the required funding to establish and to fulfill their ideas. In addition to that, there is a lot of accelerators today providing mentorship for young entrepreneurs, because in addition to a good idea, you need to have the right skills to implement this idea and take it to the end. And also a last point is such events, networking event, where you can actually test your idea, get validation from people. And I think this is a very important framework to follow, which will help, I think, build a bigger ecosystem in the fintech area, but also in the whole startup ecosystem in Lebanon, which will benefit everyone.